I think I just blew up my transmission.
Today I'm going to take you along for a quick scenario regarding my 1988 BMW E28. I was on my way to a party looking fresh as hell and decided to take the E28 on the hour drive to the beach. I wanted to take some pictures, and the E28's been so reliable I had no hesitation on driving it that far that day. I started backing up with no issues whatsoever, and the second the car touched the road, it was game over. I put the car in gear, dropped the clutch, and immediately heard a loud pop. And just like that, the car lost all power to the wheels right in front of my house 10 seconds into the trip. I didn't know what happened and was so screwed trying to figure out what to do. But I got really lucky. A random person asked if I needed a hand and was willing to help me push the car back into the driveway. Being how old the car is, I wasn't shocked something went wrong, but I had no idea what it was. The engine was still running, and since there was no transfer of power, it had to be something to do with either the clutch, the transmission, or the differential. I was so lucky the car still rolled and didn't hear any knocking or metal pieces falling off. So me and this nameless hero pushed the car as far as we could, and once we got it into a decent spot, just like my patience that day, he was immediately gone. I was already late and couldn't take a look at what went wrong, pulled out the Shelby and left the E28 broken and abandoned. And that brings us to the next day.
I got the car jacked up, so now it's time to see what the actual damage is.
Please be the drive shaft. Please be the drive shaft. Oh my god. The axle. What the hell? Alright, this is actually good news. This is good news. Wow. Well, that's good news. Thank God both the transmission and the drive shaft are okay, but that rear axle is in no good condition. It could always be worse. I think breaking an axle was probably the best case scenario, so I think I'm just gonna try to bolt it back onto the car just so I could drive it back into the garage, because obviously I can't work on the car right there. So yeah, let's see if we can get it back on. The first thing I noticed was the end cap was totally smashed and would have to be replaced. Next, I checked to make sure the threads in the differential were okay. Surprisingly, they were all good, but one bolt did snap off and will have to be extracted. Even with the end cap smashed, I managed to bolt the axle back up, but the question was, will it hold? Man, I really hope this works. I was able to lightly bolt the axle back onto the car, but hopefully it'll hold to the garage. But it is a limited slip, so power needs to be distributed evenly between the two axles. The car turns on, it revs up nice, everything, but whenever I would put it into gear, it just wouldn't go into gear. It felt like it was in neutral. So hopefully we can make it to the garage. 20 feet, let's go.
Dude, I am so happy right now. So far, it's been all good news. We got the axle back in the car. She actually got into the garage, and this means that the differential is okay. That is an extra $700 in my pocket and a big load of stress off my back. So now all I gotta do is wait for a new rebuild kit for the boot so I can replace that dented end cap, and we'll be back to normal.
3 days later.
Finally, I got a new rebuild kit in for the axle, but since the axle was replaced a couple months ago, this is the only part that we're gonna need. This just goes to show, if you're gonna own a classic car, you need to be good with your hands and you can't be afraid to get dirty. And you can't be running to the mechanic every time something goes wrong. You need to be able to do this stuff yourself and not spend a crap load of money on something that's relatively simple and gonna cost you a crap load of money if you bring it to a professional. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish unbolting all these bolts, pull off the boot, and we'll see if we can extract that bolt before we start putting new parts back onto the car.
hours later, and we're finally on our first test drive. And I waited the 24 hours because we did use Loctite on those bolts, and Loctite technically needs 24 hours to cure. But that just goes to show you need to start learning everything about everything if you're going to get into classic cars. If you're going to start maintaining your own cars and do everything yourself, because realistically, you just have to do it yourself. The work on these type of cars is way too expensive per hour. $150 an hour, $200 an hour, forget about it. I'm not paying that. I am not paying that. A job like this would have costed easily $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 for something ridiculously simple. But yeah, that's just what I mean. You just kind of have to learn everything about the car you're about to buy, and you need to be able to, or you need to have the nuts, honestly, to just handle these problems when they just start come flying at you. It feels like I'm kind of working on a... Was that a cop? It feels like I'm always working on a new problem every time I hop into this car. But that's kind of the pleasures of driving a classic car. I kind of like fixing all these little small problems when they start coming up. You start learning more about cars and engines in general, and you start learning more about your own car. And I think that's definitely a good character trait to have. Most people can't even hold a screwdriver nowadays. What was I saying? Owning and daily driving a classic car is definitely challenging, but it's also ridiculously rewarding. It's such a reward being able to hop in the car and knowing that you fixed the car and you did everything, and that's just a badge of honor that you get to hang on your wall. But I wouldn't get discouraged if you don't have the knowledge, if you don't have the tools. The one thing that you need to have, regardless, is passion. Passion and motivation. If you're motivated and you're just so focused on achieving that goal of getting into this car and driving away, and whatever car it is, Mustangs, old Camaros, whatever it is, you need to be motivated to fix it and get the job done. Or else you're just not going to get anything done. It's just going to be one of those rust buckets that sit in your driveway all day, all year, for 20 years. But that's just my take on the hobby. If you want to bring it to a shop every time something goes wrong, my God, do whatever you want. But, you know, for the normal guy that doesn't have the tools, doesn't have the money, and just really wants to get into the cars that he really loves, do it yourself, man. Do it yourself. Do the research, because I'm going to tell you right now, at the end, it's rewarding. You're going to be happy that you stuck with it and got it done. But, yeah, hopefully I convinced you to buy yourself the classic car you've always wanted. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe if you haven't already.